Warning, this is not a short video. It's going to be the most comprehensive one-stop shop for all new Line 6 Helix users. I'm going to cover updating your unit, initial hardware setup, and editing a fully featured Sunday-ready preset that you can use right away. This won't be a TikTok rapid-paced quick tips video. This is going to be a very deep dive, and I recommend navigating around the various sections using the chapter markers in the description box whenever you need a recap. Let's get started. Here's the first thing you do when you get a hold of your brand new Helix, whether it's brand new in a box or it is a second-hand unit. Get a USB cable, which is Type B, the printer kind of cable. We'll update your unit using HX Edit software, and then we'll use HX Edit software to tweak tones on the computer. You can tweak your tones on the floor, but I find that it's best to edit on the laptop because everything is laid out, there's no hidden menus, and it's just that much more intuitive. Let's get to it. When you go to line6.com under software, here's what you're going to do. You're going to choose hardware. Let's go to Helix. Software, we're going to go to HX Edit, which is here, and choose your OS. In my case, it's Mac. HX Edit, make sure you're on the right version. Do check the release date and check whether this is the most updated version of HX Edit. Line 6 is pretty cool. They have all the documentation up there to help you update your unit. They've got it included in the release notes of the software. They tell you everything that's new, but the important thing for you is that you want to get download. You are going to have to create an account. There's no two ways about it. Just buckle down, get your account, download it, and then install HX Edit. Once you open up HX Edit, you should be able to see a prompt screen that comes out to tell you to update your firmware on the unit. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to skip this update process. I'm going to link a video that I previously did before about updating the Helix, and then you should be able to find all the details over there. But do follow the step-by-step instructions given by Line 6. They're pretty comprehensive and you won't go wrong. Let's cover some hardware setup, and to do that, we're going to go into the global settings. To enter global settings, you need to press the three-bar button right here. Just press that, and you see a selection of menu options at the bottom. Click on Global Settings, and now you see that you've got a whole plethora of things that you can adjust. Let's do the obvious things first. Number one, under ins and outs, we'll do systematically. We will make sure that the guitar in pad is off, unless you're using a very hot output pickup like EMG 8185s or that kind of like shredder guitars. You generally have this off. Here, you don't need to worry about any of these settings yet. These are for advanced users. If you're using a microphone, if you need phantom power, this is where you turn it on, and this is where you turn the gain up. It's pretty cool. The mic in gain is quite extensive. You can crank it up to 60 dB of gain, I believe, which is what an SM7B will require. So if you ever do have an SM7B, you don't need to get a cloud lifter. This Helix can crank up to 60 dB of gain. Use the page left and page right buttons to scroll through the options. On the second page of ins and outs, I want you to look at quarter-inch outputs, XR outputs. These two are quite important. This is where you change the output levels of your quarter-inch outputs and your XR outputs. These instrument and mic levels are soft. Line level is a plus 4 dB boost. Not really a boost, but it's just configured at plus 4 dB. So if you ever need more volume out of your Helix, this is where you configure the outputs to send hotter signals out. I like to leave it at line because my sound guys like hotter signals. Similarly, on the send and returns, I set them all to instrument level because I don't have any line level instruments being sent into the send and returns at the back here. Again, it's an advanced feature, but if you ever integrate your Helix with your existing rig, let's say a pedal board or something like that, you want to set these to instrument level. Particularly for video creators, when you look at the ins and outs, just make sure that the sample rate is at 48 kilohertz. You can crank it down to 44.1, you can crank out 96 kilohertz, but I find that for most purposes and for making sure that your audio from your Helix is compatible with video, make sure that it is 48 kilohertz. Use the big joystick on the right to move between the menu options. So let's go down to preferences. Very important, the first page of preferences, you got these whole slew of options here. Let's go to tap tempo pitch. By default, it is set to authentic, which means that when you change the BPM on a delay pedal, it's going to have some pitch wobble. You don't want that because that's going to be wobbling up, wobbling down. It's just a big hot mess. Change that to transparent. Next, let's scroll down to put switches. This is going to be quite important. By default, the Helix is set up for 8 presets. And when you press the stomp button on the right hand side, you reach stomp mode, but there's no snapshot mode, which is what you want. Here's how to access all of that. Under preset mode switches, we're going to change this to scroll all the way up to 8 snapshots. So this way, you have access to all 8 snapshots on the front of your preset. But you're not done yet. When you hit stomp mode, you'll see that you only have 8 stomps available, but you have a total of 10 stomps available. So what you want to do is you go up to the switch mode here and turn this to 10 switches so that in stomp mode, you have access to all 10 stomps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this way, you have access to 8 snapshots, and when you switch to stomp, you can make your stomp selections and make sure that they correspond to a snapshot. Last thing you want to check again, press the hamburger icon to bring up the selection for the global settings. Let's go to global EQ, and you know the global EQ is on because when you press the bypass button, this lights up. So, and leave it off, that's my preference. You should be doing all your EQ adjustments on the preset, not with the global EQ. Otherwise, every single preset will have this kind of master EQ applied to it. And now that you're done, let's go back to the preset by pressing the home button on the bottom left-hand corner. And now you're ready to tweak. It's time to tweak a preset, and I highly recommend having this video and your HX Edit software on at the same time to get maximum value out of tweaking it together in real time. Do pause as often as you need to check out the settings. Let's open up the new preset, and I'll talk you through what's happening on the screen right now and what you're hearing when you plug in your guitar. In this case, it's a Les Paul Studio into the Helix. I'm using multimedia speakers for this example. If you're really serious about tweaking, you should be using a good pair of headphones, like a pair of Sony MDR7506s, or what I'm discovering to be really nice and neutral sounding headphones, a pair of Sennheiser HD490 Pros. You're hearing the raw guitar sound that's processed from the input straight to the output, nothing going on. Unlike your traditional guitar pedal environment where the inputs go from the right to the left, a bit like Chinese or Hebrew, the Helix is laid out from left to right. Now that's the biggest mindset shift, which can be a little discombobulating at first, but I assure you, once you start tweaking around, you will get used to it pretty quickly. Let's configure your inputs and outputs. Firstly, let's go to the input, and I'm going to turn on the noise gate. The problem with noise is that if you don't cut off the noise at the source, that little bit of noise is going to be amplified and processed through your signal chain. It's going to get louder and louder and louder the more you stack overdrives, delays, reverbs, or what have you. So right at the source, that is the correct way of getting rid of noise. Let's turn on the gate, but this gate is very aggressive. You see, I can barely get it to sound at all. Just because the threshold is too high, it's cutting off the notes. What I do like to set this at is I like to put it at minus 66 dB and I like to put the decay up to, let's say, 400 milliseconds. I want you to imagine with me what the gate is doing. The threshold setting tells the gate when to close. In this case, if it's a very high setting, it will close very fast. It will make sure that there's no sound coming through, which you don't want that. You want it to be a gentle gate or a moderate kind of gate setting depending on your overdrive settings. Minus 66 dB is a decent threshold setting for a modern praise and worship kind of rig. And the decay tells the gate how fast to close. A fast decay rate means that the gate will close very fast, whereas a slower decay, the more you turn this up, the slower the gate takes to close. My recommendation is between 400 to 600 milliseconds just because it's a bit more natural sounding. Guitar input impedance and guitar pad, you can leave those off if you're using a standard guitar like a Les Paul. If you have something like active pickups, you might want to turn on the pad. So now take your mouse cursor and move away from the input, and you realize that the little squares start to appear when you hover over parts of the signal chain. These blocks are blank spaces where you can start to add in things in your signal chain. I want you to scroll all the way to the right. Because the Helix has 2 DSP chips, it has the ability to process 2 independent signal chains just like this. If you want to maximize both DSP chips for your guitar processing, here's what you got to do. Click on the output block of the first signal path. Change this to path 2A. Now you see that a little arrow has popped up over the second signal path here. So guitar is going to be going through from left to right all the way to this end block here, and that block is pushing signal to the start of this signal chain over here. So now you have 2 paths for all your amp and effects, which is pretty cool. Now let's add your first amp and cab. Go over to the guitar amp section. Let's scroll down to AC30. At AC30 normal. Now when you load up the amp, this is only the amp module, there's no catalyst simulation, so this will sound pretty gnarly. It sounds pretty bad because there's no cabinet emulation. What you need to do is load both the amp and a cab. So in the Helix ecosystem, they're in 2 separate blocks. Scroll down to cab, let's go down to the 2x12 silver bell, and now you should hear that the tone is correct. Now, I want to do a few things to this tone because it currently feels like it's very bass heavy. It's not very bright. It's not very chimey. We're going to do a few things to change that. Let's try to change the microphone. Let's go to a 1-2-1 ribbon. And then let's try to move this towards the center of the cone. Where the microphone picks up the sound from the speaker has a profound effect on the tone. The most full range sounding of the tone is going to be right at the center of the cone, where you're going to capture the most bass energy and the most high-end frequency response. Currently, at this distance, you'll feel there's a bit more bass response because the microphone is right next to the speaker cone. Which can be pretty cool by itself, but I know that I'm playing with a big band and I don't want to be too bass heavy so that I don't get in the way of the bass, guitar, and the keyboards. I'm going to pull this back to 5 inches. You can hear that the tone is a bit more even. It's not so bass heavy anymore. Low cut and high cut, these are very important settings that you need to know. Low cut will roll off low frequencies, the frequencies that you don't need, and high cut rolls off high frequencies, the frequencies that maybe are too shrieky, too shrill to the ears. And right now it's currently set to 90 Hz and 5 kHz, which is quite an aggressive low cut, high cut. The low cut can be a bit more aggressive. I got to bring this up to 100 Hz because you don't need all that low end information. And I got to bring this up to 7000 Hz because I think that the guitar can breathe a little bit more with not so aggressive high cut. Now let's go back to the amp section. Some experience with the amps in real life really help here. AC30s have a very dynamic relationship with the drive and the EQ. With a higher drive settings, the bass is a lot more pronounced, so if you bring that drive back, you are going to have a lot more even sound. And automatically, you can hear that bass has just rolled off. Let's see how this sounds like. A lot more responsive, I like that. The cut control is accurately modeled as per real life. It is simulating how if you increase the cut control, the high-end frequencies will roll off. So compare cut at 0 means that there's no cutting off at all. Compare this with a cut at 10, a full cut. It's a very dark tone. Little tone hack if you want to go play jazz, just turn up the cut control to 10. We'll leave it at 0. Sag, hum, ripple, bias, and bias X, those controls are advanced amp controls. You can leave those alone for now. The only thing that I would change is the bias. I like the bias to be a bit hotter because I like tubes to run a little bit more hot. The way the amplifier distorts will change depending on whether the tubes are hot or cold. I like the sound of tubes running a little hotter, so I'm going to turn up the bias to something like 7 or 8. Now, it's very important to be able to create sounds that you like with single amp and single cabs. This is going to be a stepping stone for you to venture into stereo amps, stereo cabs, which is a whole new ball game, and I don't want you to handle that kind of complexity at the beginner phase. I implore you, don't jump the gun, don't go straight to stereo amps and cabs. Try your hand to get single amps and single cabs to sound nice by themselves. If you're finding value setting up with Helix with this video, please hit the like button so that YouTube knows to send this out to more Helix users. Thank you so much for doing that. Let's do a basic wet section where I'm going to configure this to sound like it's going to be for Sunday. This is going to be the post-amp cab delay, which I'm going to use the transistor tape. I really love this sound. Turn the headroom up to +12 and max it out because you don't want the internal circuitry of the delay pedal to clip your signal. It's purely accurate for some of these pedals to clip internally when you overload the signal, and that kind of sound is historically accurate, but I don't think it's very nice. You will turn up the headroom of the delay pedal. This will mean that it takes a lot more to distort that signal. And at the maximum headroom setting of these delay pedals, it's unlikely that you'll distort them at all. I like that sound, but I'm going to tone down that wow and flutter. I'm going to turn up the spread because I do like too much. Trebles is important because you don't want the delays to do this. No delay sound. That's very unnatural, right? Let's turn the trails on so that if you do turn the delay pedal off, the delay sound is going to naturally fade off like this. Much more natural sounding, and it's just more natural. Next, let's add a basic reverb, and I'm going to go with, let's go with a modulated reverb, which is the glitz pedal. Again, turn on the trails here. It's a pretty decent tone. I think the decay can go slightly higher. There are two very important settings in the reverb, decay and mix. A high decay, low mix setting for reverb will get you into the ballpark of the modern reverb sound for praise and worship. So at 5 decay and at 22% mix, I'm going to turn the pre-delay up to 100 milliseconds, and pre-delay tells the reverb when to bloom in. If you set the pre-delay to a low pre-delay setting, what this essentially means is that when you play and pick a note, the reverb onset is immediate. Versus if you turn it all the way up to, let's say, 200 milliseconds, you can hear that slowly blooming that way, man. That's a bit too much. So I'm gonna go back to 100 milliseconds. Now I want this to be a bright reverb, so I'm gonna turn this up to, let's say, 300 Hertz. And I'm gonna turn this to 12,000 Hertz. That's a much brighter reverb sound, and I quite like that. The ray and depth refer to the modulation setting, so I'm going to turn this to 1 and 5, which is my preferred settings. So not only is the reverb occupying space in the sonic spectrum, you're also having some movement with the modulation. Let's move on to a dry section. Head over to Dynamics. Let's turn on the Kinky Conf, which is my favorite. The default settings for the Kinky Conf, which is like a SP compressor, is very, very heavy. It's quite heavily compressed. It's almost breathing, you know, that guitar is just being held and gripped on by the compressor. What you do want to do is we want to tame that compressor down. We want to turn up the attack, which means that the compressor is not going to immediately kick in. And then we turn down the release so that the compressor lets go of the sound a lot faster. Let's go with 2 and 4. And just to preserve some of the original attack of your uncompressed signal, I'm going to turn down this mix to 65%. Instead of that very heavy compressed, very breathing kind of sound, we instead get a more natural sounding guitar like this. So you can hear the compressors grabbing those notes and making the lead lines all even out. It's pretty cool. Next, let's add an overdrive. Let's go with the Timmy. Current settings. Not bad. I think it can be tweaked even more. The Timmy on the Helix is my favorite overdrive. It is accurate and reminds me of my own Timmy because these bass and cut controls work similarly. I like it when my Timmy doesn't cut out the bass frequency, so I'm going to turn this down. When you have a lower setting on the bass cut, that means there's more bass. And with a higher setting on a treble cut, when you turn up a cut control, that means you're cutting more of those frequencies. And this means with the overdrive, I like the bass to have a bit more bass and a bit less treble. Let's turn the clipping to the center portion, which is my favorite mode. And just turn this up to 7 to drive the end harder. nice first stage overdrive. Let's stack it with a second overdrive, which you can do it separately or not, with the Minotaur, which is a clone style. Current settings are quite mild, so why don't I turn up the gain? Why don't I turn down the tone? And why don't I turn this up and drive it harder? Nope. I'm gonna turn down the level 2, it's a bit too high. At these settings, the clone is acting like a clean boost with a little bit of mild dirt, which is pretty cool. I can have a mild overdrive kind of sound. If I stack them together, what do I get? So right now you got a choice of like ABC system. You got clean, which is nothing on. You got a choice of an A drive, a B drive, which is lighter. For clean passages, or maybe you need something more like a you would do something a bit more clean. Then ABC, which is stacked together. Presently, the volume difference sounds like a big jump between your clean and overdrive sounds, but that is intentional because think about it this way. You start a song clean, that's fine, but when you start to build up dynamically from your, let's say your intro to verse to chorus is going to be a big jump. Chorus is going to be where the drums is having that big cymbal ride and that big groove coming in. The bass is probably thumping down pretty hard on the strings. You don't want to get lost in the mix by having your volume jumps too small. If you kick on the overdrive for chorus or bridge and you find yourself being lost in the mix, that's because your volume jump isn't high enough. You need to go higher. And now we got a basic sound, clean, overdrive, and some basic delay. Let's add some specialty sounds like .8 delay and let's say a shimmer reverb for those ambient swells. Let's add a vintage delay. I'm going to change this to the .8 setting, which is you scroll down to the menu here. Now you can turn this up or down depending, it really doesn't matter. Here's the key, with .8 delay, you want your delay repeats to sound close to the volume of your original signal. To do that with the vintage delay, you need to make sure that there's not too much of that tone roll off. So turn up the bit depth and turn up the sample rate. Turn up the mix, don't be afraid to quote 50%. Let's turn that rate down and your depth higher. Headroom up to 12 dB. Trails on. What do we get? I purposefully put the delay in the front of the amplifier because I want the delays to have some wet section saturation. When the delays get processed by the amplifier is reacting to the delays and possibly distorting them because they're hitting the front end quite hard. On clean, it's pretty decent, there's no distortion. Or with some drive, you can start to hear that the delays crunch up more. you hear that tail end breaking up, that is some distortion happening with the delays. Let's add a very heavy reverb. Remember to go to stereo. Let's do something very obviously shimmery like this. Now there's a lot of things happening right here, but all you need to know is that right now the setting is the reason why it sounds so weird is because that second pitch is at +7, which is like a major 7 kind of interval. You want to bring that down, and let's bring this to, actually, let's bring it down to octave down. We're going to have a pretty thick reverb now. That's pretty cool. Let's turn up the mix to something more insane, 50%. One thing I forgot to do, let's put a volume pedal. On the first signal path, we're going to add in a mono volume pedal. I mean, it's a lot easier if you have the pedal right at your feet, but I got it set up here on the rack, so that's why it was a little bit clunky. As a praise and worship patch, it's not complete without a POG setting. So let's go to the simple pitch under pitch and synth, under mono because it's a mono sound source. Under interval, let's turn this up to an octave up, so it's +12. Make sure your mix is at 50%. Put this before your drives. And now when you turn on the drive, you can start to get some of those Bethel style lead tones. Don't forget to save AC33. HLX HC33. Let's add some chorus because chorus is coming back to vogue. Let's go to a 70s chorus, which I pretty like. Let's load it up. The 70s chorus has this setting where you can turn it from a chorus to a vibrato, and in this mode, I think the vibrato settings don't change the sound. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So you just need to worry about the rate button up here and the mix down here. If you turn to vibrato mode, that's such a vibe. Now with tremolo, it's a very nice amp-like kind of tremolo, but I want it to be sync up with the tap tempo. And to do that, you got to click on this little symbol here. That's going to change the time source to the tap tempo. And then I'm going to change this up to 16th notes. Yeah, I like this. So this was something faster. Nice. Now if I turn on both the $8 and the tremolo together, you can start using that as like a pseudo keyboard synth kind of effect. Actually, at these settings, this is the I think this is I the Lamb. But what if I don't want to play Bethel style and that's too thick of a reverb? We can turn it down with the decay. Let's turn this down to something less. Turn down the mix to even something lighter and you get something a bit more clean. In fact, if you turn off all the delays and just have a reverb, and you can play stuff like from the 90s. Don't be afraid to turn things off to see what it suits the mood and the genre of the song. If you need something from the 90s, turn off the delay reverb, make it milder. If you want to have more Bethel style, turn things back on. If you turn up the decay and turn up the mix to 20%, I get Bethel. I think this is the fastest way to get into different genres or different eras of worship music. Just tweak around the delay and reverb settings. If it's lighter, that is going to be suitable for your 80s, 90s, what have you. If you want it thicker, that's going to be your Bethel, Hillsong, your modern stuff. You won't be able to control this at your feet. So let's go and assign some buttons. One quick way to recognize which buttons go to which row. Footstoods 1 to 5 will refer to the top row buttons. Footstoods 7 to 11 are the bottom row. And I like to have my drives at the bottom row and my ambient effects on the top row. And let's apply this in sequence. Bypass this line to number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11. That fills up all the effects on the bottom row. On the top row, let's go to $8 delay. Let's go to shimmer with the And now that we've assigned the effects to the various foot switches, let's begin to create snapshots so that we can change sounds very quickly. Snapshots basically allow you to turn on and off multiple effects at the same time. Snapshot 1, let's turn this into our clean. Nothing's on except for the basic quarter note delay. Let's copy this. Let's go and turn this into a crunch, basic crunch. So we turn on our Actually, no, I'm going to turn this into a drive. Snapshot 3. Going to turn this into the crunch, which is the Timmy. Snapshot 4, I'm going to paste again because I don't want to keep turning on and off everything. This is going to be my lead sound, and my lead sound is basically both of these turned up. Let's go to snapshot 5. We're going to have an ambient clean, so let's turn on the $8 delay. Snapshot 6 is going to be, let's say, MB drive. Turn on a $8. Turn on the Snapshot 7, I'm going to paste it over again, make sure I don't turn everything on. Trem delay, just for the vibe of it. Turn this on, and turn this on. Okay, number 8 is going to be my heavy ambience. Swell. For that, I'm going to turn on the shimmer, turn on the chorus, and why not? Just a pitch shifter. See what happens if I turn it all on. And there you have it, a fully functioning basic preset where I just use minimal effects. I barely tweak any of the effects, and I got a fully functioning preset that can traverse the genres from the older Hillsong stuff to the newer modern Hillsong Bethel elevation stuff. This preset will be available for free on my free pack, so head on to Buy Me a Coffee after this and download it for yourself. If you stuck around to the end, congratulations, you now have a Sunday ready preset that has a space to grow. In the future, I'm going to be updating this preset to make it more advanced, so remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you'll find it as soon as it drops. In the meantime, here are other preset tweaking videos that you'll find interesting, especially my updated Hillsong preset that incorporates the feedbacker unit. Do head on over and I'll see you there.